Hi there. I hope you're all having a good day. Thank you for taking time to watch this particular webinar that is part of the series of webinars that the California School-Based Health Alliance, along with the Community Schools Initiative, is doing to support all of you in your planning process. My name is Sang, and I serve as a consultant to the California School-Based Health Alliance. I work largely in the Inland Empire area, where I support some of the activities in this Community Schools Initiative, as well as help to mobilize our School Health Coalition. Those of you who are watching this webinar may already be familiar with CSHA, but I'll go ahead and say a few words about our organization anyway. We are the organization in California that works to support the idea of putting healthcare in schools, which is through wellness centers and school-based health centers. And we do that through providing technical assistance, community organizing, and really through public policy and advocacy to ensure that students have the health services they need at schools. And we are a membership organization, so I encourage you to explore what membership may mean to you personally, as well as to your organization, and you can find out more about this on our website. This webinar here is part of Module 2 in the 5-module series in thinking about how we can support all of you in really upholding this one of the 4 pillars of the community schools model, which is an integrated student support. And for this module, excuse me, we are going to look at planning, collaboration, and partnerships. But particularly, around what it means to think about stakeholders and looking at coordination among our stakeholders. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to meet these 2 objectives. One is to describe the range of stakeholders and their roles in the planning and implementation of school-based healthcare programs, and to identify at least 2 best practices in coordination as outlined in some of our guidelines, which I'll go over in a little bit. The first part is this right here, and this is thinking about the expansive range of stakeholders in school-based healthcare. And it's really, you see the word stakeholders here, but it's really our students, right, who should be at the center of pretty much everything we do. And so in thinking about who should be involved in the planning process, as well as even the implementation and further down the spectrum, it's folks like the individuals listed here, our school administrators who, oftentimes are some of the folks who envision having school-based healthcare programs in the first place. We definitely need their support and their involvement. School board members are equally important, particularly when we think about partnerships and funding and things like that. So engaging your school board members as early as possible is always a great idea. And we often find that among any school board body, there is perhaps 1 or 2 champions who really understand school-based healthcare, or just the idea that health should be an integral part of any student's academic trajectory. Of course, school staff are very important, whether it's teachers, counselors, or coaches. And again, sometimes we think of some of the more obvious roles, but like health teachers, but really sometimes it's folks on the school campus who are the biggest health champions, because they either recognize the role that health plays, or because for folks like coaches, they need school-based health centers in order to help facilitate perhaps getting their athletes to get physicals in a timely manner. So definitely encourage all of you to think about school staff as an important stakeholder. Further down here, we see school nurses. And again, this is another important role. And in fact, in some situations, school nurses may be seen as competitors to school-based health centers. And that is actually very far from the truth, when in fact, we know that for school nursing and for school-based health programs, school nurses should be at the table, to be part of these conversations. And what school nursing and school-based health centers do is actually enhance each other when we are able to coordinate and collaborate. Down here are students, and like I mentioned earlier, students really should be at the center of, the stakeholder bubble, but we want to be intentional about including students in this array of stakeholders, because we really invite all of you to involve students and their voices in the planning process, whether it's helping to collect data for assessment, or really to involve them in perhaps thinking about, what programs we should roll out as part of our school-based health services programming. And even when we open our doors to really establish perhaps a student advisory board, or sometimes they're called youth advisory boards, to get their feedback on what is happening and how to really reach out to students in a more inclusive manner. Parents, caregivers, and families are also very important, because oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but all the time, we want to make sure that when healthcare is delivered, families are part of those conversations. So that way students feel more supported, and ensuring that they're able to receive the kind of care they need, but also to maintain their health status. And so, yeah, so we really want to make sure parents and caregivers and families are involved. The way some schools do this is for schools that have parent centers, bringing parent centers into what outreach efforts or educational efforts with the school-based health center is a great way to really get their involvement. And you can also have parents be part of your planning committee. So that way, from a parent's perspective, they can really help shape what service delivery looks like and how those should be delivered. Healthcare professionals are at the heart of school-based health centers. Without them, we don't have school-based health centers. And so getting their thoughts on, what are feasible services and how do we go about providing such services is important. And also to make sure that we're able to, have the capacity to do all of this as well. And then lastly, public health officials. Public health officials really help frame school-based healthcare from sort of what we call the 30,000-foot level, right? What does the presence of a school-based health center do to really perhaps reduce health disparities, improve health equity, and thinking about how our wellness centers or school-based health centers shape the landscape for services, whether it's through the provision of clinical services or educational efforts, or even just thinking about how school-based health centers can be part of the safety net for community members, particularly those health centers that are open to the community. And so, in wrapping this piece up, we can probably add more bubbles to this circle, but really not to overwhelm all of you, but we want to at least start with this list as you're all thinking about who should be at the table to be part of these conversations. In terms of involving stakeholders in the planning stages, I just want to briefly talk about what the planning stages entail. The first one is conducting a needs assessment. Here we want to understand what are the needs of the students and the school itself across all kinds of domains of programming. And then also in your selecting the sponsoring agency and other providers, what do we know about community providers in the area? What is their reputation like? Do we have personal contacts with some of them? Because I know sometimes, contacting a provider can be a cold call, or reaching out to an organization that you're not familiar with. And so who within the planning committee perhaps may have contacts with then, some of these organizations. And so that's really important. The third piece is really the phase of the planning stage where we're looking at deciding on what kinds of services are already exist. So that way we don't, reinvent the wheel, we don't duplicate efforts, but really what already exists that we can actually leverage or enhance. And then the last stage is really identifying, recruiting community champions, and then launching these efforts. In thinking about that, we can go back to the previous slide that looks at the range of stakeholders, but we also know that we can recruit other community champions who are not part of that, whether it's religious organizations leadership, or local elected officials, or others on the school campus that you might not have think of, to really think about who can help champion this work. I think will help take the school-based health center or wellness center much further. In terms of thinking about considerations for stakeholders, these are some of the things that we want to emphasize. The first is that we want all of you to facilitate a planning process where people are engaged in collaborative decision making. Voices are equal at the table. Voices are inclusive and diverse, and to really think about how do we actually collaborate in making decisions. The other consideration is generating support. When we are able to put together, stakeholders to come, for planning committees and what have you, a lot of this is also to generate support for the idea of school-based healthcare and to know that in bringing stakeholders on board, these very same stakeholders can generate support within their perhaps peer organizations as well. So for example, if you've got a mental health care agency that you'll bring on board to campus to deliver mental health services, they are, that particular agency may already be collaborating with other agencies who can also be part of the service delivery at a school, and not see this as competition, but rather collaboration. How do we offer more and enhance services to students, knowing that perhaps one agency isn't able to meet all the needs that are necessary at a particular campus, particularly, high enrollment campuses. The other thing you're doing is you're building champions, and boy, do we need more of that in the school-based healthcare world. We definitely need to build champions for not only the concept itself, but for when times get tough, whether it's budget cuts or whether we're thinking of introducing perhaps, reproductive and sexual health care that might be seen as controversial, but we know are necessary part of everyday care for young people. How do we ensure that there are champions out there who can make the case for us? The other consideration is to think about engaging in student-centered practices. And what that really means is ensuring that whatever the group decides to do and how to do it, that students are really at the center of all this, right? We want to make sure that these wellness centers and school-based health centers are youth-friendly, youth-centered. How do we think about, hours of operations that are perhaps more convenient for students? And how do we make sure that perhaps some of the hours of operations are for students only if your clinic is going to be open to the community as well? So really in thinking about ensuring that all the things that you're doing are considered student-centered practices. Building trust is another important part of the considerations with stakeholders, and this, as you all know, will just take time. And that could be helped with making sure that some of the meetings are in person so people can have face-to-face interactions. And also, when you're able to be in each other's spaces, you're also able to understand where each perspective is coming from a little bit better. And so we definitely know that building trust is such an essential part of these collaborations, but also that these things will take time. And then lastly, the things that we are doing to support our kids are also what we're doing to support the strengthening of our communities. And so thinking about how our communities will accept or support the idea of school-based healthcare is really important because, at the end of the day, we want, our wellness centers and school-based health centers to be considered assets to the school environment, not, something that's controversial or a burden to the community. After all, this is really about providing holistic healthcare to kids who really need it the most. I want to share with you a couple of tools that we have with the State Alliance to really help you in your work. And these tools have been around for a number of years, but they also took a number of years to compile and really test out. The first is what we call the School-Based Health Center Best Practices Implementation Checklist. So this actually has been around for more than 10 years. And since then, it's been, revised, updated, and really fleshed out. It's a 2-page document you can find on our website. And it really has 5 domains with 20 constructs. And so I'm going to go over 2 of the domains. One of the domains is section 4, which is about, and I'll actually just read it. This is about share in the school's mission to improve academic achievement by working together to address absenteeism, school climate, and classroom behavior and performance. So under this particular domain, this is really about, are we in this together in a way that makes sense and that matches both of our organization's mission and objectives? And there are 5 different I guess, elements in this domain. Um, and you can see here, this is about whether the school-based health center staff and administrators meet regularly to discuss policy procedures, about whether they meet regularly with the school staff to look at the needs of students who are perhaps having issues with attendance or behavior or even academic performance. And again, that goes back to the idea of really thinking about providing whole child care to our students. The third one here is helping students develop leadership skills and have opportunities for student career pathway development. I mentioned in a few slides ago that one of the best practices for school-based health centers is to really encourage the development of student advisory boards or youth advisory boards, and this is part of that. How do we bring students into this work of school-based healthcare, but in a way that allows them to develop their leadership skills and really have a chance to grow, personally, academically, professionally. The fourth item is to have the school-based health center and school staff work together on activities and programs that promote positive climate and school safety. And this could be, through workshops, through assemblies, through campaigns that really help to build a place where students feel a sense of belonging and feel accepted and feel like, wow, my school really cares about me. And the school-based health center is in such a great position to be able to do that because of the expertise of healthcare, folks, health educators and public health people. And the last item on here is that the school-based health center supports teachers' health and wellness. And so this is looking at how do we ensure that the teachers and our staff are also able to feel like we care about them and also care about their well-being, because we know that if teachers and other staff are not well, chances are that students may not be well too. And then the last piece or the last section in the checklist is this area right here, which is on communicate and coordinate care with other providers, partners, and payers to function as an integrated healthcare system. I know that sounds a lot and it is a big goal to have, but I think what we want to make sure is that when we are striving for a more integrated healthcare system, that there is communication and coordination with the school-based health center and other partners, and that we're able to share information with our student patients in a confidential way to make sure that all parties who are on a need-to-know basis do know what is happening with that particular student and their care. And the last piece I wanted to mention is really the fact that knowing that this is not always possible, but when it is possible, we really encourage each school-based health center to have a coordinator role, and that this is super critical. This should be a person who is responsible for the overall school-based health center's management, the quality of care, and really to be that primary liaison with the school personnel. And so on the slide here, you see that we actually do have a section on guidelines for school-based health centers. And this is one of those things that is really emphasized and highlighted, is that, for school-based health centers to function well, the idea is that you are able to invest in a position at the coordinator level. And I just want to end with an example of the coordination that does exist across a number of school districts who are doing this school-based healthcare work, and that is LA Unified School District, and particularly their set of wellness centers. And so LAUSD has developed what they call WCCs, or Wellness Coordinating Councils. And these were established at the very beginning, actually even before the school-based health center or wellness centers were established, is that they brought together a group of people who are going to be partners and who are going to be responsible for delivering and designing the school-based health center. And we're meeting way before the doors were open. But since these doors have been open, they continue to meet on a regular basis, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly, and really focus on these four domains here: the coordination of activities, the integration of these activities, making sure that things are integrated, be able to facilitate the partnership, whether it's being able to look at an MOU or an operating agreement, and really to implement best practices so that way we ensure that high-level services are delivered to our students and our communities and their families. And before we end, I do want to bring to your attention the California School-Based Health Alliance. We have just a plethora of resources for you to tap into in your planning process, as well as your implementation process. And that is our Vision to Reality Tool Guide, which many call the School-Based Health Center Bible, which includes really a comprehensive list of topics to consider, along with example forms and templates for you to use. And so that is available for free and to download and to reference and cite and just have available. The second piece is a document, and it's much shorter. It's more of a snapshot, but that is what we call key steps to planning. So thinking about a high level planning process for you. And then the last one is the best practices checklist, which I had already gone over. And again, we love that tool a lot because I think over the years, as we have learned more about the field in the 30, 40 years that we've been doing this work, we really know what works at, on the ground level, right? To really enhance the work that you're all doing. And with that, I just want to say thank you for watching this webinar and that we are available through social media as well as on our website. And please reach out to us if you have questions, whether it's me in the Empire or any of our staff members. Thank you very much for your time today.